When asked, what is Veterans Day, I tend to get a lot of different answers. Some say it's the day we say thank you to people who wear a military uniform, or maybe an army hat. Maybe you just think it's the day an old guy sits outside a 7-Eleven and asks for donations for a red flower. Or maybe it's the day we sometimes get off of school, or the day you post a picture on your social media and say thank you, but are not really sure who you're thanking. Truthfully, for most of us, it's another day with a title, another day we need to learn about in school, and for most, it's just any other day. For those of you who might not know my story, Veterans Day is so much more. My father was 18 when he chose to enlist. Chose. Can you even imagine choosing to put your life in danger? Knowing you are signing up only to go right to the battlefield. My father was engaged and living one of the best times in a man's life, but he chose to fight. He chose to go. He left his fiancée behind and chose to go to boot camp. He chose to go to war. After only a few weeks of training, picking up a gun for the first time, learning how to carry equipment in full fatigues, how to save a life, how to take a life, how to fight, he left for Vietnam. Once there, he saw things he still to this day will not talk about. He did things he cannot forgive himself for, although he did these things he was trained to do in order to keep us all safe. He chose this, and yet I don't think he ever really understood what he needed to do in order to keep us safe. He chose to go to war. He was also sent to fight in a war many did not agree with. Can you imagine putting your life on the line to protect an entire country, and some people in that country look down on you for not being there? Can you imagine someone saving you and then turning around and saying, "Why are you here?" Can you imagine knowing you might die every day in order to provide one more day for those you love, and yet people spit on you when you return? Can you imagine choosing this? Shortly after arriving to Vietnam, my father was sent on a mission to scout out an area that the Marines would soon occupy. He was trained to search for threats, to hear movement and see shifts in the trees, to spot the sniper before they spotted him. He was prepared. He chose this. However, on this day, he was told that the ground in which he crawled would be safe. He was told that all of the IEDs left by our enemy had been disabled. He was told he had to look out for the enemy, but he was never told that maybe one of those IEDs was not dismantled underneath the ground in which he crawled. An IED is planted by an enemy in open fields, forests, even in a town where children play, and it's triggered by the weight of a body or the mass of a vehicle. And as my father crawled over what should have been the dismantled IEDs, it was triggered. It had not been disabled correctly. And my father who had not yet met my mom, my father who was not old enough to drink, my father who was not even yet close to being a father, my father who had driven for less than a year, for my father in that moment, the whole world went dark. He chose this. He was airlifted out of Vietnam and woke up in Walter Reed Hospital. He was confused, disoriented, and in pain. He had been taught to fight, to shoot, to kill, but no one told him how to deal with the aftermath of what had just happened. He chose this. He would remain in the hospital for a long time. He lost his entire right leg, and his body was filled with parts of the bomb that they could not remove. He would never drive again in the traditional way he had just learned. He would never walk again like he had walked before. He did not know if he would ever get out of bed. His fiancée left him. She said he was no longer a real man. His mother had died when he was young and his father worked. He was alone. He chose to fight. He chose to keep us safe. He chose to risk his life for an entire country. And now he was alone. Lucky for me, he met my mother and she was able to bring him back to life, to give him hope, to help him walk, eventually run faster than me and both my kids. He learned to love, he learned to live, but no one, not even my mother, could teach him to forget. My father was blessed with 40 years of happiness, wealth, kids, grandkids, and success before it all came crashing down 2 years ago. We don't know what triggered it, we don't know why it happened, and we don't know if he'll ever come back to us. But 2 years ago, he experienced what we call PTSD. Essentially, this is when your brain brings you back to the moment in which you were in that field, crawling through the mud, looking for a sniper, scared you will die, protecting yourself by any means necessary while protecting your country. My dad went back into a world in his mind, and we couldn't find a way to get him out. He thought everything was going to hurt him. He thought he was about to die. And while we told him he was safe, his brain and the PTSD could not comprehend this. He was eventually hospitalized. After a lot of therapy, I'm happy to say my dad is doing better, but he will never be the happy dad I once knew. He lives with nightmares now. Thoughts that God won't forgive him for the things he was asked to do, that my mom will walk away like his fiancée did so many years ago. Some days he won't get out of bed and I have to come over and help. And other days we can get him to leave the house. Some days he still works out and feels good about himself, and other days we have to convince him he's not back in the field. Some days he's my dad, and some days he is that soldier. He chose this. So we talk about Veterans Day. We talk about saying thank you. Thank you for your service, your sacrifice, your life. But when you say thank you, you never really think about what that Marine did to earn your praise. You don't think about the family who deals with it 40 years later, about the Marine who shakes in bed, afraid to step on the floor because the IED might go off. You don't think about the wife who didn't think her life and her loving husband would be reduced to a child who needs her help. You don't think about our grandkids who say, "What happened to Pops? Is today a good day or a bad day for him?" What you don't think about is the 70-year-old man who's in pain as he gets older and tiny pieces of the bomb are beginning to rise to the surface of his skin and we need to take them out. You don't think because he chose this. What you do think about is how uncomfortable it would be to walk up to a stranger, shake their hand, and say thank you. What you do think about is the fact that it would have been nice to get off for Veterans Day, and how pretty that picture will be that you put on social media and hashtag thankful. But what you should think about, and what I think about as a Marine's daughter, is how no one really gets what Veterans Day is. I don't think I really understood what it was until 2 years ago. For to assume that there should be one day a year where we would thank a vet for choosing this would make no sense. Because a vet is the reason you get to sit in those seats. A vet is the reason you're granted access to education, and a vet is the reason you will hold a job one day, buy a house one day, maybe have a family one day. A vet is why I can sit here as a woman and speak to you. A vet chose not just to alter the years of life spent in the military, but to alter the life he would have after the military. The pain, the memories, and the thoughts that no one trained him to forget. He chose this for himself. My father left a teenager from the Bronx to fight a war for hundreds of people he did not know nor would ever meet. He returned broken to a country that didn't always appreciate what he had done and was not prepared to fully heal him. And he was asked to live with the memories of Vietnam in order to allow you to sit in those chairs. Veterans Day is the day we are supposed to remember those who fought for us, but I challenge you as high school students to see the memory of a veteran in everything you do, to see how their life altered for you. Because without these men and women, what you do every day would not be possible. And I remind you to not only thank a vet, but to put thought, admiration, and appreciation behind that thank you. So on behalf of Bogota High School, I'd like to appreciate our veterans today and every day for having the courage to choose this and allowing us to be free. Thank you.